Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gents in cyberspace, depending on whenever you're watching this. I'm RyVo here once again with this interview series called I'm RyVo, Who the Hell Are You? Got a really awesome guest today, another wonderful musician, singer, songwriter I know in the Bay Area. I've often told this gentleman he writes songs I wish I did, and I'm really excited to have him here. And let's not waste any more time. We're going to bring up my friend. The world knows him as Troubadour Fools. Troubadour, what's going on, my friend? How you doing?
Hey Ryan, yeah,
Uh-huh.
thanks for that intro.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us songwriters, nothing like hearing that somebody actually heard your song and likes it, and to hear from another awesome songwriter that they actually would love to have written something you've written. That's the highest compliment.
Oh no, that's fine. But I especially in these dour moments when I'm not writing songs, it's nice to hear good music. So at least somebody's pumping them up out there, pumping them out. So speaking of songs, let's hear one of yours. What do you say?
Yeah, I'll do a song called "The Land of Junkies and Engineers" that
Oh, I love this one. Yes, please.
seems to resonate really well, and I can't say it's my one of my favorite songs out of the ones I've written, but since people love it, I guess I love it too.
All right.
In the land of junkies and engineers live Democrats, bums, billionaires, the shamans, doctors, lawyers, investors, poets, musicians, burners and jesters, unaffordable prices, and sidewalks that stink and coexist. Or so we think, skyscrapers like tampons above all the crying, shaking from stress and from earthquakes sometimes. But exits exist for select few. The American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. There is no free time, no matter pursuit. We're all to be pimps and prostitutes. The summer like winter, the winter like fall. The Silicon Gulch, the Valley of Gold. The insane are happy with their warm guns. The reality show of news is undone. The home of the brave, the land of the free, where death and taxes are guaranteed. But exits exist for select few, the American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. Leaving your house no longer required. Amazon will deliver to your heart's desire, happy or sad, dead or alive. Don't leave your place, and you can survive rubbing shoulders with bums and the tech elite. The infantile smiles are incomplete, and the fog makes it all surprisingly clear in the land of junkies and engineers. And engineers. The streets are filled with inequality. The society has other priorities. The bubble of tech and real estate. The bubble of super conscious states. The land of computers. The land of commuters. The land of codes. The land of fears. The land of junkies and engineers. But exits exist for select few, the American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream. Where are you? Lie, la, la, lie, la, la, lie, la, lie. The American dream.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
I like that little lie, la la lie, la lie, because it reminds me of one of my favorite songs, "The Boxer" by Simon and Garfunkel, where they do that la 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 la.
Yeah, they do it much better, and I think they sold a bunch more records than I did.
Well, yeah, but
Just a tiny bit.
we haven't known you as long, okay?
Yeah, I know. I have like 40
They're like
years.
what, 50 years, 50, 60 years ahead of you. So, give yourself some time.
Maybe 40. I mean, I don't know. I'm not that young, but yeah, maybe I can catch up real quick.
Oh, jeez. Listen, I'm 42 and I'm trying to pretend I'm 22. So it's not going very well.
I'm not even trying to pretend, right? Well, I mean, that thing about like this creative flow, I mean, it's usually, if you read about, the famous, the greats, they wrote their best stuff when they were like, whatever, 17 and a half, or maybe 23 and a half, right? And when they got into their 60s, I don't know if they still wrote the greatest ever stuff they wrote. So it's, in our, senior age, like, how do we connect with that youthful, I don't give a shit, I'm just gonna like write this, and I'm just gonna admire the sun and that little bud on a branch.
Well, I don't know. I think the songwriting kind of varies depending on the artist, because there are some artists that are up there in age and are still cranking out the hits, still cranking out good stuff. Even if they're not hits, they're just, solid songs, awesome songs. But let's go back a little bit. So tell me where you're from originally. I know you hail from Russia, like another good friend of mine. But tell me a little bit more about where you came from, what your upbringing was.
So yeah, I came from what was known as USSR at the time, and now it's known as Ukraine. And I pretty much grew up in San Francisco, came here when I was 13. I went to high school here. So kind of that kind of split mind, a split personality. I'm somewhat Soviet expat, somewhat American, and depending on the day, depending on the topic, depending on the food in front of me, I may be more expat, more American. I don't know if that, but I've actually run into some people who share the exact same experience, where it's like you're not really American, but you're not really not American. You're kind of like grew up here, but wasn't born here, and there's certain things that you were already quite formed when you arrived. So, but at the same time, we're still young enough to be deformed or changed.
Yeah. It's funny your comment about food. Like, well, if you bring me proper food, I can be American. You remind me of one of my favorite lines from the Marx Brothers, when Chico and Harpo were pretending to be tough guys, and the boss asked them, "Well, how tough are you?" "Well, that depends on how much money you give us. You give us plenty money, we plenty tough. You give us too much money, we are too much tough." So
yeah, that's you bring up an interesting point, even though you're just making a joke. It's there are bits and pieces of popular culture that certain people will not have because they miss that in the reruns. I still we don't have the internet when I came here, but depending on which reruns I watched or was turned on to by friends or people I knew, there are certain parts of the popular culture that I'm completely oblivious to, including the couple of references you made to.
Oh, the Marx Brothers were old comedians from like the 1930s and 40s. Just something I grew up with. But no, I just, I don't know. Just sometimes I hear things and they link to, odd pockets of knowledge for me. I have a ton of useless information. I'm warning you right now. My brain is full of useless information. And it sucks because most of the important information doesn't get in then. And the internet has kind of made it worse. But I try not to let it. Okay, so you got an interesting upbringing there. What for you? Okay, so I guess I got two questions. What turned you on to music, and was there a particular album or song? I refer to my artists as having an aha moment, a moment where they say, okay, I got to do that. Was there an album? Was there a song that did that for you early on?
So here's my turn to share bits and pieces of popular culture that most of your listeners are completely oblivious to, because it's the Soviet, Russian, Ukrainian, and all the former.
Oh, good. I want to educate people. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I think I took guitar lessons when I was like 8 for maybe 6 months, and then I said, "This sucks. This is boring. I don't want to like do this, all day. This is not fun." So anyway, plus you spend all this time doing it, and you cannot play anything. All you can do is like play this etude a little faster, and your fingers still suck, and you still don't have any of the or whatever. So I dropped that. When we came to this country, I was lonely and bored, and said, "Dad, can you get me a guitar?" And Dad got me a guitar. And that was before the internet. So I asked one friend, asked two friends, and I learned one chord. Then I learned a second chord. So I was just playing very basic, folky, 3.5 chord stuff for a very long time. And then, listening to primarily Russian music. And then there's this band called Crematorium. Not kidding. It's called Crematorium.
Yeah, yeah.
And, they're known as sort of like this folk Baroque rock in the Russian rock, pantheon of bands. They're quite big and quite famous.
Yeah.
And listening to them, I think I was around 18. Something went off in my head, and I said, you know what? Maybe I can write that kind of stuff. Because the other stuff I was listening to, there's no way I can write that. But for some reason with them, I was like, maybe I can write that too. So I wrote a song, and it's, I don't know why people still love it. It's a really silly song. I wrote one song, then I wrote a couple more. And, only one of them I still remember. The other 4 or 5 I don't remember. And then I dropped that. I said, you know what? Not worthy. Not worthy of writing songs. Not my thing. Let me go do normal human stuff. And then, a long, amount of time passed in my life. I was doing all these other things. And then it was 2015, and a big change in my life was about to happen. And I started to write songs again. It was not what I was thinking about. I was just listening to some music at home and had this guitar in hand, and I wrote a song. And then another week, 2 or whatever month passed, I wrote another song. And I just kept writing, and it just kind of happened.
That's really cool. Now just backtrack a little bit. How long ago did you write Junkies and Engineers? And what inspired that specifically?
Yeah, great question. So that was about 2 years ago. And as many songs get inspired, it started with a line because I was hanging out with a friend. Yeah. And it just so happens most of her dates were either junkies or software engineers. Of course, we were in Silicon Valley. So I wrote this line, and I wrote this in Russian first. I don't remember what the first line was, but it was basically the land of junkies and engineers. And I wrote a verse. It's like, hey, this is a verse now. Let me write a couple more. And then I started to dig through my hummed, whistled, into the phone, melodies. And I found one that fit. And then I put it together.
Because it almost has the feel of a Bob Dylan song. It almost has to feel what we might call Dylan-esque. Because it has that, there's great imagery in the song, particularly in the Junkies and Engineers. And I was going to say, like, well, I've met some that are both, especially, in Silicon Valley. There are people that have that kind of work habit where, they need to get on to junk because they know they're not going to get enough sleep to get, further up on the corporate ladder. What's always fascinating about you, as long as we've known each other, is or with Red Bulls or through other mutual friends, I've gotten to know the Russian community a little bit, and you're not to put too fine a point on it, but you're kind of like the odd duck because most people I know within the Russian community, like mutual acquaintances of ours, are more into the traditional Russian music, more into traditional Russian things, whereas you're very Western in your songwriting stuff. Because like when I hear your music, I hear a lot of influences of bands and artists that I would relate to. And I'm wondering, like, just for the hell of it, what were some of the first bands of American? What were some of the first American artists and bands that you got into that tickled your fancy?
No, the interesting question. I think interesting observation. And by the way, like if you ever want to compare me to a Nobel laureate again, please do. I really enjoy that.
To
Dylan, Dylan. He's a Nobel.
Dylan, yeah.
How do you pronounce laureate? Laureate, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a term called Dylan-esque.
Yeah, but he's got a Nobel Prize. Yeah, but I like to be compared to people who have the Nobel Prize.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he does have the Nobel Prize. Yep.
Yes. So in terms of my musical influences, so I was really kind of not on any musical spectrum worth mentioning until I heard, I think it was Metallica's Unforgiven, which was melodic and mild enough to kind of ease you into the pop metal, which I would now call pop metal. But to me at the time was like this loud noise stuff. And once I started to listen to Metallica, I started to listen to Led Zeppelin. And then when Nirvana came out, I just loved it. Because by then, it wasn't noise to me anymore. And I, don't know music theory to this day. And now, because I write songs, I guess I analyze it a little bit and I have some idea, but I don't know what Kurt Cobain was doing, but it just resonated. But also Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith and all the, hair metal stuff, which, kind of was killed by Nirvana and then grunge replaced it. And then, I was listening primarily listening to Russian rock music, which,
Mm-hmm.
as pointed out, is more Dylan-esque, right? It's very folky and
Mm-hmm.
super, super lyrics oriented. It's a lot more lyrics oriented than, Let's Be the Smiths or the Police or something like that.
Yeah.
And when I started to write pretty actively over the last 5 years, about 2.5, 3 years ago, again, had this change where I kind of lost all interest in that folky Russian punk, folk, whatever music, and
Yeah.
really started to uh, follow Western bands like The Police, like Led Zeppelin. It's a long, long list. Of course, the Beatles, who,
Of
Beatles,
course.
of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
and then, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of names, that are worth mentioning, but at some point, and maybe about a year and a half ago, another thing happened, another light bulb either imploded, exploded, or went off. And I figured out that I really enjoy prog rock. And of course, you can spend three of your, interview sessions. What is prog? What is rock? And is yes really progressive, or are they just people who were showing off? And
Oh, my second interviewee is a good friend of mine who runs a prog rock band. So, and we were
oh,
geeking out about prog rock
yeah,
constantly.
I,
Yeah.
I should meet him.
Yeah. Drew Hamilton, Vigilus is the name of the band.
Okay, I heard.
Yeah.
I think they pop up in like prog rock pop-ups. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to. I don't think I've listened to them, but yeah, it'd be cool to talk to them.
But
So,
you bring up something interesting. You talked about not knowing any music theory, not really having any formal music training. Well, that's true of a lot of great musicians that I've heard of over the years. Like the Beatles had no formal musical training. Santana had no formal musical training, and yet look at the works they created. For my own part, I kind of feel my way around, but my problem is I like complicated chords. And then I write this song, I'm really happy with it, and I think, oh shit, now I gotta translate this for the band. I don't know what the fuck I'm playing. so I got, so I gotta research like hell and figure out what the hell I'm playing. And then I send it off to the bandmate and they go like, okay, you got that chord wrong, you got this chord wrong, you got that chord. I don't know what the hell you're doing here. So finally I got some software that can actually I can record stuff into it and it reads out, okay, that's this chord, that's that chord, that's the other chord. So I'm relying on technology or other people's knowledge for what certain chords are because I tend to go beyond my reading capability, if you will, with chords. But I think that's true with a lot of musicians. We don't, I think a lot of people that are really into the art think about what it sounds like before they think about how it reads out. And again, that could be both a blessing and a curse. Let me ask you about that because I've seen you work with bands a little bit. I've seen you work with other musicians. So having no formal musical training, how do you show other people's songs? I mean, I assume you know the basic chords.
yeah, so I usually play the parts out, and usually I will. I think in 99.9% of the time, all the intros and the interludes actually right. I just don't write them down on paper, and I
Sure.
have no clue what they are. I'll just sit there and say, okay, this is the riff part,
Yeah.
or this is the interlude, or this is what I may hum it. I may not be even be able to play it myself, but in this part, I want you to do this. It sounds something like this, and then I've been lucky enough where some of the musicians have been able to just pick it up, and others, for example, like the bass line, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything specific. Of course, it can be, McCartney-esque, or it could be Squire-esque, or Geddy Lee-esque,
Yeah.
or it can be just, like boring, just, building around the chord, but,
Yeah.
or the drum part. But yeah, in terms of like the melody, when I had a backup singer, we would work out who would sing what, and she would actually help me correct the vocal lines because, again, no
Sure.
musical training and not even an ear for it. It's like, okay, well, this line on this verse doesn't match the second verse. You probably want to like resolve it the same way,
Mm-hmm.
and watch over here. You probably want to stretch it out over the next line lyrically because it'll sound better. So all these little intricacies, no
Yeah.
clue whatsoever. And then, to your point about chords, like I gave up watching Your Left Hand because it's like, dude, it looks like the same, ninth, blues chord when I look at it, and I know you're playing 10 different chords that look to me like this. I'm like,
Well,
whatever.
like I say, if it helps, half the time I don't know what I'm playing either. So I just played like, oh, this sounded good. Let's put that in there. you know, but
But I took
oftentimes,
one of your,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say oftentimes what I do with other musicians is like, after I've translated it out, I'll say to the drummer or bass player, like, okay, check out this song by Jethro Tull or Alan Parsons and listen to the bass line here. This is what I had in mind sort of for this song, So thankfully we have internet, because I couldn't imagine trying to translate stuff without the internet. I am completely dependent on Google. But,
Yeah, I use the reverse chord lookup thing. I think it's called umla, maybe not umla.
Okay.
I have it in my it's open right now somewhere, but I'm not going to go look for it. It's in one of my 30 tabs that are open. But you
I
actually
used to use one called 8notes.com, and it was okay, but there were some chords it couldn't figure out.
Yeah, this one I think it's made in Germany, and you basically, there it is. I have it open. It's called Ulimo.
Okay.
Ulimo. And yeah, it's been pretty good so far. So I punch in like the actual fingerings, and it tells me that this happens to be whatever, D6 suspended 9. Yay.
Okay.
So yeah, and I guess one of the things, like with any instrument, I imagine with any instrument where you can take a chord, there are certain things that are easier done on a guitar and are intuitive, and they may have the funkiest, most complicated name, but it's just natural to do this. You move the same position on 5 frets, but you punch it into this thing, and it tells you, "Ooh, I'm using some really fancy chord. Look at me! I got a fancy chord right here."
It's not a chord, and it's an equation.
Yeah,
it's a mathematical equation.
Yeah, I've been using you gave me a tip one day, or we're just talking about music. I said, no, sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll try to find a chord that I like, and it doesn't even matter if it's got a name, but I will sit there and look for that chord that carries my melody where I want it to. And I've actually been doing that a lot. I will sit there and I will just look for that funny chord that in my personal quality or aesthetics filter goes, yeah, that actually sounds cool, because I don't want to do this because everybody's doing this, right? I don't want to resolve the sus chord to a major chord, because this is like, come on, everybody does that.
what I love sometimes is just kind of sitting back, like when I'm not writing songs, I try to learn other songs, and I specifically learn songs that are a little more complicated. They have to be songs I like, first of all, but I specifically want to learn songs that are a little more complicated. And in figuring out that complication and overcoming that other mountain, if you will, that other hill, having the song under my belt, it's like, okay, now I know these other chord figures too. So that it kind of enhances my own songwriting ideas. Like, oh, I could try this. Particularly for me, like Stevie Wonder has been a big influence in that way, learning some of his songs.
Don't say. I never hear you play any Stevie Wonder. Like, never, ever.
Okay, I after this show, I got something to share with you then.
I'm just kidding.
No,
I was teasing you, because
I was going to say,
you play a ton of Stevie Wonder.
I was going to say, good poker face. You had me Troubadour fooled.
Well, Fools is also.
Let's get into that. So first, okay, I want to back up a little bit. So first of all, I know you said you've spent time in San Francisco before. What drew you to the music community in San Francisco, and when did you start hitting up the open mics, and what was your first open mic experience?
So I started to write in Russian when I started to write actively in 15, and maybe for 2 years I wrote in Russian.
Yeah.
And I just got frustrated with trying to find an audience, and just that frustration led me to just think about that a lot. And I was sitting at a cafe, and there were an open mic was going on, and I was like, wait, look, there's an audience built in. I don't have to like organize anything. It doesn't matter if these people are not my friends, but I can go to these open mic events and just always have an audience and rehearse and practice and kind of feel my songs out in front of people and perform, which is what I really wanted to do. I didn't want to organize events just so I could have 20 people to play for, right? I didn't want to pull cables and figure out why somebody's guitar doesn't plug in. I wanted to perform and sing. Sure. And if you do that for 2 hours, by the time it's your turn, you're just done.
Oh yeah, that sounds like some nights at the Hotel Utah. And then you get in addition to the 2 hours, you get that one person that needs to promote all their stuff, so they take an extra half an hour for that. And then talking about themselves, and then finally eventually get to a song.
So I did the Russian thing. I organized a couple, I called it the Festival of Russian Rock, which was kind of rock oriented Russian language songwriters, which I found about 7.5 of in the Bay Area. So anyway, I'm sitting at this open mic, I think it was the Cover Lounge, and I translated one of my songs to English, and then I translated 10 more of my songs to English, and I realized I could just go around open mics and perform. And you show up somewhere enough times and you don't look like an asshole. You don't act like, well, maybe I look like an asshole. I don't act like an asshole. And eventually people start saying hi. Like, I think the first time I met you, I asked to borrow your 12-string guitar, and you said, no, this is my baby or my mama or my whatever. I was like, okay, I get it. Because I didn't have my guitar. I had my 6-string, and eventually we actually said hi and, started talking, right?
Yeah.
So it was just, driven by necessity or not necessity, but really strong desire. Okay, where can I perform? And obviously I cannot get a gig, but hey, there's these built-in gigs. You just show up and, you put, your name in a bin or, sign up,
Sure. Yeah.
and that's how it started. And then I just didn't stop. I just got, not addicted to it, but, I would take the time to drive for an hour after work instead of doing something else, and, go to Utah or go to Bazaar Cafe or go to Cava Lounge, either one in Berkeley or the one in San Francisco, or go to
Okay.
Freight and Salvage and make sure I'm number 12, otherwise you're out, or,
Hmm.
Starry Plow. And I even did a weird open mic in Saratoga, which took place at this place which sold high heel shoes and wine. Not kidding. It's called Stilettos and Wine.
All
And
right.
it's a bunch of these like really well-off older people with really, really expensive guitars playing country songs. And there I am with my
I was wondering why I saw you wearing high heels at one time.
no, I
Hey, it
think
was
that
free.
that must have been a pride parade or something.
Yeah. So you've been doing the open mic scene for quite a while then, and I notice, well, we kind of have a similar background in that way. We're both kind of, the open mic has always been a place to perfect the craft, and so it's like, particularly with the Utah, that became my church for the last couple years of my life. And I'm sure, like you have a regular place you go to every week where you just try out new stuff, and if it doesn't work out, you wait a little while, then okay, I'll give it another shot, and then the next time it gets better, and then it gets better, and then you start writing more and more songs. And then now I'm curious if there's any plans, or have you had any chance to record any of your music? Because I haven't seen really any. I don't know if I've seen any albums or singles from you.
No, so I recorded one song which was almost like a professionally done demo.
Okay.
Both of us in Russian, and then I did do a song in Russian, which even
Okay.
had a music video. And actually, I got lucky. So a good friend of mine happens to be a major Russian rock star.
Okay.
He actually helped me produce the song, and he connected me with an engineer who happens to work with the likes of Paul McCartney. So
Nice.
yeah, so this guy in Los Angeles actually mastered and engineered my song. In English, it's called "The Land of Junkie." No, it's called "Generation Lost." And I
Okay.
don't want to play it tonight. It's kind of like this, rock metal song, and
Okay.
but yeah, we produced it, and my friend, he's got quite a brand with his name and his band in Russia. He put it out through his SMM channels, and we got all of 700 views.
Oh, hey, that's no that's no small thing. That's pretty good.
Well, the
You
Land
know.
of Junkies and Engineers got 7,000 views in the Russian version. So,
Okay. Well, there.
and it was not produced. It was just me playing it on this couch at home. So yeah, it's a good question. I definitely feel like I really need to pay attention to recording, because I really enjoy writing. It's
Yeah.
like it's like a labor of love, but recording is a job. I feel, to me, for now, it feels like a tedious. Okay, I got to do 24 takes.
It
Oh,
is, it is, but it depends on who you're working with. It really depends on who you're working with, or if you're going solo. Because I've had both experiences, and it's also money. It's also a lot of money. People are surprised. People should be surprised with how much money it costs just to record a single and have it professionally done and mastered and everything. And yeah, I definitely want to see. I want to see at least an EP or something of yours, because you've written some wonderful songs. As I've always said many times, I don't mean to embarrass you, but you've written a lot of songs that I think, damn, I wish I wrote that, because I love the chord changes and I love the ideas you put into it. And again, you flow with a lot of influences that I recognize, because it feels like music I've listened to. There was one band, a Russian band, that I actually kind of liked, though it was an odd experience. A friend of mine took me to a show in Berkeley. You were there, and it was the band called DDT. Did I get that name right? Yeah. And I think through you and my other friend, I got to know a little bit of their backstory and love their music. But it was awkward for me, because they were in between songs telling a lot of stories, and it was all in Russian, because their audience is all Russian. And I'm just kind of nodding like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I don't speak the language. But I really did love their music. You know, but definitely, yeah, I absolutely hear a lot of Western influence in your music. Has there been any other cultural influences that have come into your music? I mean, obviously, aside from your home country, like any, like say, Middle Eastern or European stuff, has any of that kind of?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah, so once I started to get into prog, and I have a good, maybe I shouldn't say good, but I guess I have some ability to imitate, right? So I try to imitate the people I admire. So I was writing the song and I thought, you know what, it needs an Indian bridge. So, so I have a Google too, by the way. So I Google, hey, what are the
Okay.
chord changes in a typical raga? And I learned that they don't have any chord changes. It's like modal and music, and they really play over one chord forever.
Yeah, they usually play over C. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I'm gonna just sit here, actually on this couch, and I'm gonna write a melody over one chord because I want an Indian bridge in the song. So I wish I had more Indian influences. I don't today. There's
Mhm.
definitely some Middle Eastern and Balkan and klezmer almost subconsciously, but I think primarily it's it sounds a little bit you know um, um, fancy to say it, maybe pretentious, but hey, prog rock has a lot of strong influence on me.
Mhm.
Classically leaning rock, so
Okay.
like I tend to lean more to the classically influenced prog rock than to the jazz influenced prog rock. But
Sure. Okay.
I've also started to listen, in the last year to Brazilian music because a lot of their music is based on jazz. Essentially, we may call it bossa nova or whatever, but it's really jazz.
Yeah.
To the simpletons like me. So how can I take some jazz, some Indian, some rock, some blues, some reggae, and reggae, melody wise is
Yeah.
pretty simple. It's more about rhythm. And how can I, mix all of that and some Latin together? And I have some songs I've written in the last few months. These usually I use Russian lyrics when I write them,
Yeah.
but I've written these experiments where I go from Brazilian to gypsy punk to like a Pink Floydian progression back to gypsy punk, just to see if I can, glue it together. So yeah, I want to expand my influences, and I found the way my brain or whatever part of my body that does this works. That if I listen to enough music of a certain kind, eventually it sort of settles in some petri dish inside my
Yeah.
brain, my body, and then maybe eventually some of my stuff will sound more Middle Eastern or more Indian or more Latin, Brazilian, or maybe more bluesy, depending on.
There's definitely something captivating about any sort of foreign music that is not native to you. You know, I've definitely felt that over the years that, as much as I love, of course, I love rock and roll and stuff, stuff that's mostly American or Western. But, like when I heard Irish music for the first time, hearing Celtic music, I mean, that definitely had an effect on me. And just hearing these exotic instruments, or like bagpipes or again, Middle Eastern music or African music, there's just something captivating about this other culture that is again not native to you and something exotic. And it's wonderful how it's wonderful how it's just all music. It's all music. So it can all, it doesn't matter what it is. It can fit in, it can mix. It doesn't matter. It's just, it's whoever's mixing it and whoever has the ideas with it. It's wonderful. And
And
that,
absolutely, yeah. And
yeah.
you take things like throat singing, and you feel like the whole earth vibrates when you're listening to that
Yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
they have they're on that frequency that's the frequency of the earth,
Yeah.
and it may not be interesting melodically, but it's simple melodically. But yeah, the trance like effect that it may have. So yeah, there's so much. But I totally agree. And yeah, and to give you an example,
Hmm.
American versus Middle Eastern, a lot of surf music is heavy Middle Eastern influenced, thanks in part to the inventor of surf music because he was Lebanese.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So
Okay.
what's his name? The guy who passed recently. The guy who is most famous for surf music, who played upside down and did that the
Let me
tremolo.
let me look him up. Let me look him up.
Um,
I'm just kind of.
Dick Dale.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Okay.
He's Lebanese. He's not,
Oh,
he's
wow.
Lebanese.
I didn't
So
know
of
that.
course, yeah. So yeah, and if you listen to some, even Offspring will have some Middle Eastern riffs.
Interesting.
And of course, Tool or System of a Down, it's basically middle, Armenian heavy metal. So I think a lot of that has been happening, maybe not everywhere, but I tend to at least aspire to
Hmm.
be able to write this kind of modern music, not in the sense that I'm a composer. I guess I am, but I don't feel I am like
Well,
I
you
am.
are.
But
Yeah. You are. You are.
thank you, right?
It's,
How can I take all of these influences? Because in my mind, okay, it's 2020, 2021. Why would I write a blues that doesn't borrow from Brazilian and Latin and from Middle Eastern, right? Why would
yeah.
I do the same blues that Robert Johnson would have, and of course I'm not comparing myself by any means, but a blues man in the Delta in the 20s, had certain influences, which was already a mix of European influences and
Yeah.
Indian music, Native American music and African music, right? So that was already some
Yeah.
sort of fusion. But why would I do that if I can take that foundation, mix it with classical and Indian, and have New Delhi blues? And I'm sure there's some girl in India right now
Yeah.
writing a raga blues or playing a raga blues, right?
You know what's fascinating about the history of blues is it took English rockers to make it more public knowledge, to make it more pop culture. Because before the English got a hold of it, it was kind of an obscure black music in America and was not selling well except within the black community. The white community had nothing to do with it. But then all of a sudden it went to England and you had, well, even the Beatles, but you had like Eric Clapton and the Rolling Stones hemming and hawing over this music. And they brought it back in a whole new way. B.B. King actually thanked them for reintroducing blues to the world because blues would have died or been completely obscure if it weren't for Western culture of some sort taking a hold of it and regurgitating it in a whole different way. And blues, like jazz, is a very fascinating musical form because anybody can take a hold of it and put a different spin on it. You know, now I myself, I like certain types of blues, but and we've had this discussion before. Whereas, okay, I appreciate blues, but I'm not really a blues player. I happen to like it, but I like other stuff too. But we know plenty of musicians that are just kind of stuck in that one thing and want to stay in that one thing. And my problem is I get bored easily. And I suspect you do too, because you're definitely like a bouncing ball with your songs. I don't think I've ever heard you play two songs that sound alike. So you have different things going on in different songs.
Yeah, no, it's part of it is by design. I like multiple styles, and I think it's absolutely boring to be whatever neo country or grunge all the time or reggae all the time or whatever the modern you know uh
Sure.
part Dave Matthews Band part new Red Hot Chili Peppers sounding songs like, okay, that sounds like Dave Matthews and new Red Hot Chili Peppers, but very good stuff. But it's like, okay, but and then to your point, and not to offend any songwriters out there, but a lot of songs sound very very similar, super similar in the structure and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And
there's also, and I think I talked about this a little bit with Drew. There's kind of an inherent fear with a lot of musicians, particularly the up and coming ones who want to be real popular. They want to stay within pop culture, so they're gonna, they're gonna play songs that are pop songs. So the lyrical content and the musical content is just going to be very basic because most people don't follow prog rock or the more interesting stuff that you and I would definitely take a hold of. And I really, I'm just kind of tired of seeing that fear. I want to see more people be adventurous. I want to see more people do interesting things. Paul McCartney has always been kind of a pop singer to me, but there was one album he did that I highly respected him for, and it was an album that did not sell well. In the mid 1990s, when his wife Linda had died, he composed a symphony, and it was called Standing Stone. It came out like 95 or 97, I believe. And it's a full on orchestra, it's a symphony, but it's so far removed from the normal music that he does. And so I really liked that because I thought, here's somebody doing something that's that's completely out of their comfort zone. And that's what I want to see more of in art in artistry is just going completely out of your comfort zone.
yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff about on YouTube these days, and guys like Rick Beato, I love. I
Hmm.
learned a lot of songwriting from Rick Beato just because he analyzes songs. But the point I was going to make there are all these examples of bands that went against the grain, almost intentionally trying to not be commercial with their next release because they were bored or they wanted to prove a point.
Yeah.
And then you get "Losing My Religion" by REM, with the mandolin solo.
Yeah.
Like, what? So yeah, so if they were sitting there going, okay, you know what, this is just a job and we like our new lives, we're rock stars, let's just write another whatever album we wrote before this, just write the same stuff, just different, and make another $1 million each, and be happy.
Well, yeah. Well, like one of my favorite bands, well, these guys, Jethro Tull, back in the late 60s, early 70s, when they were just starting to tour, they were touring alongside Led Zeppelin. And while they were touring America, their label asked them, "Can you put together a single that we can sell out here? Keep the home fire boiling." And Ian Anderson wrote a song that's completely contrary to pop music because it was like in 7/4 time and just kind of an odd sounding song, but it ended up being a commercial hit. It was called "Living in the Past." But it was just such an oddball song.
And apparently the Eagles ripped it off. Apparently.
Oh no, this was after the Beatles broke up.
No, the Eagles.
Oh, the Eagles.
I think
No. That's a different song. That was a song called "We Used to Know."
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
And there's a story. There's a story that's kind of an interesting story. I only know hearsay and conjecture about it, but yeah, that's supposedly that chord progression supposedly influenced Hotel California, and you can hear the similarities. Apparently, the Eagles and the Jethro Tull did a show together, and they just didn't get along. They just didn't like each other all that much, which is a shame because they're both incredible bands in their own rights. But
one thing about musicians, how they are in their personal lives has nothing to do with their music or them on stage. I mean, they'll have their issues in their lives and their personal relationships, and some of them could be the nicest people ever, and some of them could be just
yeah, it really depends on the artist, and there's a lot of artists that I love that I probably wouldn't like to meet because they're kind of jerks. But well, let's bring up one that we've talked about a little bit. Roger Waters. I still think Roger Waters is an incredible songwriter, but I think his political stuff is completely full of shit. I think his political stances are kind of full of crap. Now, I do, of course, I agree with him being against Donald Trump. I have no problem with that. But when he started going on the anti-Israel stuff, and I started seeing more and more of that, and I think you pointed that out to me.
It's unfortunate, and people are entitled to their opinions, and somebody's opinions may piss a bunch of people off, and vice versa. But it's almost like when you have that ability to influence people, and you have such amount of fame and recognition, do you push your own agenda, or do you really believe it? But also, do you consider the implications, because you're just an icon to a lot of people, and whatever you say, they will take at face value. They will not go validate or questions, like, well, yeah, and Roger Waters, yeah, I mean, definitely one of the greats and one of the Imagineers, if there's such a word in music. After Barrett became kind of incapacitated in terms of his creative ability, Roger really carried a lot of that. He wasn't the best musician in the band. He definitely was the major creative force in the band.
He was, and by the way, just to give him a shout out, when I think of a concept album, which is something I'm always kind of working towards, when I think of a concept album, my go-to album is The Wall. I've always thought that's the perfect concept album. I never heard one weak track on that entire album, and the whole album tells a story, tells it beautifully. They made a movie with it, which people didn't like or thought it was weird, and I followed it along just fine. I thought, no, I get it. And I love the fact that the movie didn't have very much dialogue. Most of the dialogue were the songs. That's it. That's all you needed. And then the imagery.
Yeah, well, that's like, libretto for an opera, and an opera told very simple stories. It wasn't like multi-tome Lord of the Rings, right? It was, love, death, betrayal.
It takes a talent to do that, because I've heard other concept albums, like, I used to love Dream Theater. I still do a little bit, but they get a little tired at times. And what I loved about that album in particular is that it just wasn't tired. It felt good. I feel that way about, there's another band I like called Gentle Giant, which I feel, kind of goes like heavier prog rock, I would say. But let's talk about bands a little bit, because now, what was your first experience with a backing band playing some of your music? And of course, I know some of the musicians that have jammed with you because I've jammed with them as well. So
You
what's
know,
been that experience?
that was just amazing and rewarding. And hell yeah, there are these musicians playing my tunes, right?
Oh, it's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's a weird
Yeah,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah, there were several different. So there's part of that. Oh shit, I have a band and people are playing my music.
Yeah.
The other part of it, which I didn't register at first, but when there were some disagreements and some heated discussions, you realize that you're a freaking CEO of a little business, even though there's really no money involved. But you really need to manage things towards, okay, what's the best for the band? What's the best for that next performance? How do you manage people, and how do you make sure that people are not at each other's throats? It was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a manager, but I just want to sing my songs. But because I am the front man and the songwriter, I've also become the manager. But yeah, it was super rewarding, and I wish it kept going. But the bass player left, and I thought, okay, let me rethink this whole thing. And
Yeah.
I thought about it for a month, and then another month, and then I was like, you know what? I'll just be a songwriter with a guitar, and I'll do a band at some point in the future. And it's been 2 years.
It's funny you should mention that because I'm belatedly coming to that viewpoint as well. I still want to have a band for, album recordings and stuff, but I'm kind of weighing the pros and cons of, having a live band again and doing live shows, because up until 2020, it was a real headache for me. You're financially constantly trying to get caught up on, because I pay everybody that's in the band. I make a promise with them, like, I don't care if we don't make a dime at the show, I'm paying all of you. It's a verbal contract because, one, they're my friends, and two, I want to ensure their loyalty. I don't like people working for me for free. So it's going to hurt me a little bit, but it's going to be more rewarding for me in the long run that I contribute to them. And but then you got to worry about the gig. Then you got to worry about drawing people to the gig, and then you got to worry about getting some numbnut sound guy who's not going to know how to do sound and make you sound like shit. And
Yeah, that stuff. Yeah.
it's just multi levels of stress. Some people can handle it. 2020 came along. We had the lockdown and everything, and even though I'm going to ask you about how you feel about the current events, but for me, it was a mixture. The depression kind of sunk in a little bit later. It's like when lockdown first happened and all the shows were getting canceled and stuff. My first thought, honestly, was, I can breathe for a minute. I can get caught up now because I'm still working. I still have a night job and such. I can get caught up. I can build up some of my equipment, get new guitars, which I did. Just get caught up. Just take a breath of fresh air, not have to rush around worrying about things from paycheck to paycheck. But then the depression kind of sunk in, and it definitely slowed my songwriting down because I thought, I get to that point of thinking, like, what's the point of writing songs right now? I don't know how to feel about the world right now. I really don't. One of my guitars that I ordered online, that's one of my babies now. I love it. I got on eBay, and the day it arrived in the mail was the same day that we had the orange sky because we had the wildfires going on. And it was just, you have a particular elation when you get a new instrument and you're real happy and stuff, but that elation maybe lasted an hour and a half. And then I was right back laying in bed, just feeling all depressed, like, God, what's the point? I feel like we're living in the end times right now. It just felt awful. Let me ask you how you felt about that. Obviously you were still working, you still kind of kept at it with the songwriting, but what was going through your mind in 2020, and how did you cope with any possible depression or anxiety during that time?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting and deep question. Yeah, I mean, I entered the pandemic unemployed, so a lot of my energy was into job searching and trying to figure out, what to do next if I can get a job in my profession.
Sure.
What are my options, and how much savings do I have, and what do I do? And and there's the pandemic to make things, worse on top of everything else going on. But I don't know if it's just the way I am, but I felt very creative through the year. So all the kind of things that pulled you down, the depression, the sadness, the uncertainty,
Yeah.
the news, it actually fueled my creativity. I guess I'm a closet introvert, even though I perform and I do sales for a living. So I perform at work too. And I'm very extroverted in most social settings. In fact, I enjoy being home alone, right? I enjoy
Yeah,
having an awesome excuse not to go anywhere, because if you don't have that, it's okay, I should really go there. I should really go there. I should really do this.
sure.
And yeah, as much as it's bad for your health and maybe bad for your mental state too, I'm happy to just spend the day at home, watching Netflix and playing guitar.
Yeah, yeah, I've been there too. Yeah, but it's just I think about my own mental capacities during this time, and I have to stop and think. I'll bet you other artists feel the same way because it has been a weird. Well, let's just say it's been a weird year and a half, but I do honestly feel like we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel now. I do think that this summer we might start seeing more and more things go back to normal or some semblance of normal. I really think that, because we're starting to see a little bit of that now. More and more people are getting vaccinated. I haven't heard about any new COVID cases in San Francisco. I can't speak for other cities. Other states are kind of fucked up, but that's because they're Republican. Um, watch, this show gets banned by the Republican Party now.
Yeah, not around here. I mean, yeah, I mean, I see where if you're not super right leaning,
Yeah,
it's actually quite a comfortable area to be. Maybe if we were in Texas somewhere or more right leaning, being left would have been harder. But you know, in terms of politics, not to make this any political
sure.
conversation, but what's going on right now in Israel, I certainly see the other side of the left, where it's really it's black and white one way, and of course being a Jew and being pro-Israel, you like,
Sure.
hold on, people, it's not that simple. Don't go saying this if you don't know what's going on. You haven't even been there.
Hey, do me a favor, because on social media now. Most of my news, I hate to say, is social media because I have a lot of friends who are politically savvy, and they're the ones I'll see, the important news articles from. I've seen a lot of people talking about stand with Israel, but I don't see any of them posting articles or anything. So I have no idea what they're talking about. Can you fill me in? I mean, I hate to be the ignorant American, but I only know hearsay and conjecture about what's happening in Israel. What's going on over there?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question. So yeah, so there's an escalation of conflict. So Israel has been at war since 1948. Since Israel has been formed, it was never not at war. It's either Egypt or Jordan or Syria or Lebanon or the Palestinian territories,
Okay.
or Iran through the Palestinians, or other Arab states who want Israel gone. So the war has been going on every day. It's just not always heated as it has been the last week. So
Okay. Okay.
you have and again, I'm not an expert, but to simplify
Sure.
things, so you've got Israel and you've got two Palestinian territories. One is called the West Bank, one is called Gaza. Gaza has been autonomous without any Israel presence or control, other than of course at the border, because that's where Israel is,
Okay.
for a number of years. And it's led, however they ran their elections, but a terrorist organization known as Hamas is the government of Gaza, and they attack Israel when they can. And in the last week, or I don't remember when exactly started, they shot rockets over into Israel, supposedly because of some dispute over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which happens to be next to the Dome of the Rock, the big golden temple thing you see on all the
Yeah.
posts.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So yeah, all these rockets are flying into Israel, into civilians, right? So they don't shoot rockets at Israeli military installations. They shoot rockets wherever they can, in the middle
Okay.
of nowhere or right into the residential neighborhoods if they can. So
Okay.
Israel, of course, goes, fuck that. We're gonna shut this down, right?
Yeah.
So they're taking out the tunnels. So you got to wonder, right? So you've got this impoverished state that won its independence, more or less. I mean, of course, it's not fully independent. Israel controls all around it, but hey, you guys had your chance, and you built tunnels, and you somehow amassed 2,000 rockets, which is what's been fired so far. And the economy is bad. There are no jobs. People are struggling. So, and you have money to build tunnels and get rockets. Okay, and now you're shooting them at civilians. Well, what do you think what's going to happen, right? So I made this post on Facebook yesterday, and I got a lot of left flack for it.
Okay.
Mexico shot a couple rockets into California, saying, "Hey, it's our land. You took it from us." What would happen to Mexico, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great.
like
You know,
yeah,
and of course the problem with getting the news on social media or getting any kind of news on social media is oftentimes it's slanted.
it's very slanted, and it's as much as slanted by the Israel side. But okay, you got rockets flying into civilians. Okay, what are you going to do? You got to stop that, right? You got to
Sure,
protect
of course.
civilians. But saying, oh well, it's because Israel, kicked some Palestinians out in 1948. That's why. It says because Israel is an apartheid state. What? How is it an apartheid state? Arabs and gays and all other minorities, Christians live much better in Israel. And if you were gay in the Gaza, you'd be dead. You'd be stoned.
Exactly.
Of course.
You know,
So
I saw a meme that
don't fucking say this shit like Israel is apartheid state.
I saw a meme that really incensed me, and it was a meme saying that President Biden allows Israelites to kill Palestinian children too. And I thought, Biden doesn't have anything to do with anything that's going on over there. He's not the president of Israel or Palestine. He's the president of the United States.
Well,
All he can do is help if they need help. But we're trying to fix our own shit over here. Don't throw that crap at him.
Well, don't put fucking children and women in front of your military installations, right? Why is a residential building also a spot for militants? You separate them. Don't put your children in front of a weapon. So yeah, if Israel has rockets flying into it, so this is what happens. They call the owner of the building, tell him get the fuck out. Then they shoot one rocket as a warning shot, and then they take out the building with the second shot to make sure all people get out. And if you are militant, you're gonna kind of hide in the general population or run into a tunnel. And if you happen to be neighbors with the militants, well, sorry. I mean, how is a country supposed to protect itself, right?
Absolutely. The problem with the far right and the far left, there's a classic line that really says it all to me, is that people don't alter their views to fit the facts. They alter the facts to fit their views. And we're seeing that more and more. And one thing that not enough people are talking about is, I'm sorry, the left is guilty of it too. The right does it a lot, but the left does it a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who's trying to prove a point can do this, but like this today on my wall, because I made this post about rockets flying from Mexico. Yeah. This person who happens to be a yoga teacher and woke as fuck, woke in sleep, I call it.
Yeah.
Like, well, thank Zionism for what's going on in Israel. So you're being anti-Semitic right now because, where do you draw the line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? And obviously these people don't hate the Jews, but they don't know what they're saying because they picked up some whim that there's this oppressed people called the Palestinians. The Palestinians weren't a people until the 60s or something. It's, Yasser Arafat created this. And I'm not saying, they don't deserve what they deserve, but hey, they're Arabs, just like Jews are Arabs. And some Arabs are in Jordan and some Arabs are in the West Bank and some Arabs are Jews. We're all Arabs. I mean, Abraham was a freaking Iraqi. So like, fuck this whole like, in Islam, prophet, the major prophets of Islam are Jewish prophets because Judaism was the first monotheistic religion. So like, all this crap is just bullshit. Nobody really knows what they're talking about.
I know it's so true. And I remember years and it was last year. I got into an argument with another musician. We're cool now, but it was a really awkward conversation because he put up a meme citing that more people know about the slaughter of the Jews and the Nazis, but not enough people, know the truth about slavery in America and this and that. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why are you making this an either or? Why are you making this an either or? Are we having a competition to see who's more evil? How about they're both fucking evil? Okay. Why are we, I see this comparison with people where it's just my side's more, oppressed than your side kind of crap. I'm like, no, why don't we agree that we shouldn't do either? Why don't we agree that we shouldn't follow either of those things and just move on? Why are we making it an either or?
And I agree. And I think that's really stupid. I mean, people don't really know much about the Holocaust these days because it happened a long time ago. And especially people who are not, not Jewish or not Gypsy, who, or not gay. And they're like, oh yeah, we know about the Holocaust and we don't like hearing about, the 6 million killed Jews and others. Let's talk more about slavery. Yeah, to your point. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the genocide in Africa. Let's talk about that too. Let's talk about the Armenian genocide by the Turks. Let's talk about the American genocide of the Native Americans. Let's talk about all of this shit.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
Move the fuck out of California and give it back to Mexico, and then give it back to Spain, and then give it back to the Indians and shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I remember there was a right before Trump got elected, I think it was. I saw a meme that just made me crack up, and I wish I kept it. And it said, Mexico agrees to Trump's wall, but only if we can go back to their original map where they had like half of Texas, because Texas. Well, Texas, I don't. I'm not like the best at American history, but I do remember that Texas for the longest time was part of Mexico.
Well, what do you think a street here is called El Camino Real? Do you think the Indians came to El Camino Real, or the English,
absolutely,
or the hippies? It was it was a way for the king, if he or she decided to ever visit, so they could like have a nice road to travel the territories and the colonies on. So, and actually, before the Spanish, who colonized California before the Spanish?
Well, the Native Americans.
No. Well, the colonized.
Oh, I see what you mean. Say that again.
Russians. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Russian River is called the Russian River for a reason.
Wow, so I had no idea about that, because I knew about the Spanish, and of course I knew about the French, and then the English, and then eventually.
I mean, they didn't recolonize. They just had a fort up in Fort Ross, and they kind of hung out. Yeah. And then they said, "Okay, we killed all the fur. We don't know what to do with this land. Let's just go back home." And then they sold Alaska to the U.S. because they didn't know what to do with Alaska either.
I don't even know what to do with Alaska.
Yeah, but the Russians, in fact, Russian Hill is called the Russian Hill, supposedly because they found Russian graves there. So yeah, Russians were here first. They were just not, they already had enough land. They already had all this land that they don't know what to do with. Because, Russians killed all the Native Americans in Siberia and did what's the proper term for that type of genocide? There's a term for it. But anyway, they had the exact same stuff, diseases and just pushing them out and taking the best land and killing their native cultures and their language. In fact, Siberians and Native American Indians they look alike and they act alike. Shaman is a Russian word. Shaman is not an English word.
Okay, well, yeah, it does sound Russian. I got to give it.
The drum that's in Siberia just as much as it is here. So anyway, we can talk about that.
Oh no, that's fine. But you know what? I want to get into something about you here, which I neglected, and I'm sorry that we're just getting to it now. Troubadour Fools. Talk about how you came up with that name. How you came up with that nom de guerre.
Yeah, very very down to earth story. I had my last name on Facebook. I was hanging out with a friend, and she happened to be in marketing. It's like, we got to get rid of your last name. It's like, why? Oh, this employer will Google you. That employer will Google you. You don't want your Burning Man photos or whatever you did last weekend to show up.
Burning Man photos, okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, shit, that's a good point. So what should I be? I don't know what name to come up with. Well, look. So my avatar, that cartoon-looking blonde dude with a guitar. So guess what his name is? His name is Troubadour, and he's one of the most famous Russian cartoon characters ever. And his name is Troubadour.
Okay.
So she said, well, why don't you be Sasha Troubadour, because you already used the avatar that all Russians around the world know and love. So I became Sasha Troubadour, and 2 weeks later, everybody forgot my last name, and Troubadour became a nickname. So when I was thinking of a band name, I had a Russian band name, which was Russian wordplay on troubadour, drugs, and foolishness. So when I had to translate that nickname into English, I didn't want to pick the drug connotation. I picked the foolishness connotation. So therefore, it became Troubadour Fools. And, the tongue-in-cheek part of it is fools is not just plural for fool. It's also a verb, as you pointed out earlier. So, the clever me is fooling everybody. Ha, ha, ha. No, so that's how it happened.
It's a clever name. It's a really, really cool name.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And you said 2 words today several times, Jethro Tull. And you said Dylan a few times. So yeah, definitely very much this idea of taking a Dylan type lyric. I know this sounds pretentious as fuck, but whatever. Taking the Dylan-esque approach to lyrics and coupling it with like a proggy sound. That's what I've been trying to go after the last year. Once I discovered that I can write something more interesting than traditional, whatever traditional is, but when it's not reggae,
there's too many traditions. There's so many traditions.
When it's not folk or reggae or blues, it's this whatever weird, classically influenced, prog influenced stuff.
You say you sound pretentious, and no, I disagree. You sound like you. You sound, I mean, if you happen to have a little more intellect, you obviously want to put that in your music, because because in that intellect, in that larger array of knowledge, you have more things that inspire you. So I don't, I don't, I, you know, I sort of gawk at the word pretentious. I know some people who are pretentious. I would never call you pretentious. you know,
Oh, thank you, Ryan.
pretend, honestly, and maybe this isn't the definition of the word, but I don't care. Pretentious people to me are people that act high and mighty and more intelligent than everybody else, but they're not.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
this really is just, it's one of these things, to come to terms with calling what you write art, to come to terms with
Sure.
calling what you write music and lyrics, and then being ballsy or pretentious or whatever the word is. Hey, compare. I'm going to compare myself to Jethro Tull, yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Bob Dylan, and Paul Simon, and Leonard Cohen, and RyVo, and Sting, and sit here and say, yeah, it's somewhere on the spectrum of Sting, yes, Paul Simon and Bob Dylan, and insert some Jethro Tull in there, and some, Blind Lemon Jefferson, maybe Bob Marley somewhere, and all this Russian music I used to listen to on top of it. Yeah. Yeah.
You have no control over what turns you on when it comes to music, when it comes to art. Something hits you. I know that for a fact. I'll hear Steven Wilson is a recent artist that I really got into, who's, if you like prog rock, Steven Wilson's another good one. In fact, Steven Wilson is probably the most sought after producer right now, because now that they're remastering and re-releasing classic prog rock albums, Steven Wilson has been doing his own remixes of these albums, and he's worked heavily with Jethro Tull, with Gentle Giant, with Yes, so on and so forth. But he's an incredible songwriter in his own right. And I was going somewhere with this, and I completely lost my train of thought. but you pull your influences wherever they are. I brought him up because I remember he came out with an album a couple years ago called "To the Bone," and it was one of those albums I could never listen to the whole album all the way through, because I was always finding this one song that I wanted to put on repeat over and over. Like, oh, I love what he's doing here. Oh, I got to do something like this. Your creative juices just start flowing when you hear that special song. Uh, when you hear that album. And again, going back to Pink Floyd's The Wall, as I said, that's the mark of a really good concept album. And so that's the one that's kind of my reference for, like, if you want to hear a really good concept album, here you go. This is it. This kind of told a story good and proper, and every song fits into it.
I
And
know.
yeah.
My kind of view of prog, and then again, some people don't like the term, and some people, if you listen to one of the live recordings of Cream, they were referred to as pop music, because the term rock hasn't really been adopted yet.
Yeah.
So, but to me, it's this, and of course now I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, there it goes. Bands
Getting
like
old, man.
I'm not trying to be a troubadour critic here, because it's very easy to piss people off and just discount you because you're for you to critique Pink Floyd. But I think one of the reasons that Pink Floyd is so popular and so well respected, I mean, there's definitely a strong pop element to their prog music. I mean, they wrote really cool songs.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for the sake of how fancy is our keys, and how fancy is our drumming, and how fancy is the bass line. Not that fancy, maybe. Yeah, Roger Waters. Fuck you.
But what's magical about that stuff? What's magical about that stuff going into that area? Not even just prog rock, but like just really good artistry, really good music. Is a lot of the artists that really made genuinely great songs, great albums, came to it on their own. I mean, maybe they were influenced by something that was popular, or maybe they were influenced by something that was obscure. But the fact is, they found their own voice and projected their own voice into their works. I think of another artist, Willie Nelson, who's another favorite artist of mine, and completely removed from prog rock because he's country. But even when he does covers, he really puts his own voice, his own spin on it. So you still recognize the original song, but the feel of it now, it feels like it could be a Willie Nelson song, because he just has that natural ability to do that. And again, when I look at these prog rockers, or any kind of rockers, or even your stuff, what I really like is, okay, I'm hearing your voice. This is no one else writes this. You wrote this. So it's unique to you. I always get disgusted when people say everything's been done. Like, no, you haven't listened to everything. You haven't listened to everything at all. Maybe different styles have been done before, but you haven't heard every single individual on this planet. It's the individuals that make something interesting and unique. Even in certain, even with different prog rock bands, I mean, there were different approaches to prog rock, to what was prog rock. So I don't know. I always look at it that way, like, and hopefully, I've written songs that have had a positive influence on people. But again, it's always about, I never want to tailor myself to an audience, because there's a fear for me with that. And I'm kind of wondering where you feel about what you feel about this. I think sometimes tailing yourself to an audience, or working yourself to be popular, goes against being you, being who you are, being who you want, being the whole reason why you picked up that instrument to write songs or to play songs. I picked up the instruments to express me. I picked up the instrument to express my songs, or to play other songs that have deeply influenced me, but they are always my choice. And I get disgusted when people say everything's been done. You need to hear the individuals.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's so many, ways to take this conversation to so many other topics, because it touches on, one of the topics we touched on. Yeah, there's definitely unique voices, and these bands, these greats, they found their voice. But what I was trying to say, I mean, they also found a way to be pop, in the sense of, it was songs that were singable, hummable, and they stuck in your head despite all the musicianship and mastery, right?
Sure.
Maybe some of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer stuff was out there, but their hits were really songs. Lucky Man, right? Lucky Man.
Oh yeah,
is like a country song, really.
Yeah.
And
they have, there's a certain song that they have that certain hook.
Yeah. And just like Pink Floyd, are more known for "Wish You Were Here" and "Sign Me Crazy Diamond" than for just, oh, these guys were great guitarists, keyboardists, drummers. It was all for the sake of the song. And if you go out to the guys like Yes, and then from there to Soft Machine and Zappa, they sort of started to get into that cult, where it didn't reach that large of an audience, because it was weird and complicated and more proggy. And then from that point, of course, there's so much music, and especially now, anybody with a laptop or even a phone can get more or less a demo out there, versus before you could sing at home into your tape, and it had to be produced in the studio. So there's so much music. And I have this theory, maybe you have the same one. On the outskirts of Madrid, in a town that I don't even know what it's called, there's some dude or gal that has a PhD equivalent in guitar, and is maybe the next Waters Hendricks, Steve Wilson and Alex Lifeson and all of them together.
Absolutely.
And their brand is worth shit, and all they can do is play at a bar, play some gypsy jazz at a bar to pay their rent, and maybe they can teach some guitar lessons. And nobody really cares that, maybe they have a YouTube channel and they play this amazing, intricate music, but maybe they won't get discovered,
Well, look at, I don't know if you are familiar with Sixto Rodriguez. You ever heard of him?
You know who turned me on to Sixto Rodriguez?
Who's that?
My famous Russian rock star from Russia. It's like, I've heard of Sixto Rodriguez. Like, what? Who is that?
Yeah.
And he took me to see him at the Warfield. And I was blown away. Like, this is like this, Dylan nobody's heard of.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. Searching for Sugar Man. This guy, he was on the Motown label, and and they were trying to market him for years. I think he was, and he just fell into obscurity. And then all of a sudden, someone took one of his records to South Africa. And without him knowing it, he became bigger than the Beatles in South Africa. And it's just such an amazing story. And it's just so funny, all the legends that were linked to this guy, because nobody knew squat about him. There were legends that he lit himself on fire, or he did this, or he did that. No, he's this unassuming guy. He went back to being a construction worker. And it was just a very, very normal, very humble character. He wore a suit when he went to work.
Yeah, it's I wonder, for every Pink Floyd, and of course they deserve being Pink Floyd, and of course Yes and Rush and all these people, they deserve what they got, Jethro Tull, but for every for all of these bands, there was that story where they were one record away from going back to flipping burgers or whatever it is they had. Rush was there, Dire Straits they're dire straits, the sultans of swing,
Oh,
they
yeah.
were one song away from being, broke and having to go do something else because they needed money, right? And for some reason, these bands, they had that, Jethro Tull, right? If
Yeah.
not for Aqualung, we probably wouldn't be talking about Jethro Tull because there'd be this obscure, what's that, progarchives.org? That'd be on there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Oh, they told a great story. I've got a documentary about him, and then I want to get to some of your songs. But there was a great story about the early days of Jethro Tull where they were playing at some pub, and all of a sudden in the middle of their set, there was hardly anybody there. All of a sudden in the middle of their set, everybody was gone. There was no audience. And they went to the door guy and said, "Hey, what happened? Were we that bad?" And the guy says, "Oh no, don't worry about that, fellas. Pot pies are on sale next door." So yeah, they've all had the shitty gigs. And you know what's fascinating to me is because I bitch and moan about some of the worst gigs we've ever had. But I've also been to more professional shows where they've had shitty sound or they had this problem or that problem. So it kind of, I hate to say it, it kind of made me feel good. Like, good. I'm glad that we're all human. I'm glad that we all are suffering through the same things.
Yeah,
But
no, it's
yeah,
a business and it's got its own, whatever makes an airplane fly, or what's a good
yeah,
analogy? I don't even know what's a good analogy, but whatever makes a restaurant operate, we don't see
right,
goes wrong.
right,
But I happen to have a good friend who plays stadiums in Russia, and
yeah.
it's a fucking business and it's a fucking logistical nightmare. And he's got two guitar techs and a drum tech, and he almost got killed by being electrocuted because something wasn't wired between on stage a long
Shit.
time ago, and he was a second away from being fried to a pile of ashes. So like, and yeah, so like, to us, before you get to know it, I mean, I used to not understand why the band thanks the sound engineer. Like, he didn't play anything, he didn't write anything, I don't even know his name. He's some weirdo in tattoos and shorts back there. And then when I did my first show, it's
Yeah.
like, oh fuck.
No, you got to have a good sound engineer.
Yeah,
I,
you
I
need,
ended up
like,
I
if you
ended up
get up on stage with us, I mean, you're more important than I, because if you don't do your job, I might as well not even get up here, right?
yeah, we've had nights where we've had a horrible sound engineer, and we've had nights where I've had to hire someone that I knew could do sound engineering because, like we've played at, God, I can't even remember the name of the place now. I think we played somewhere in Oakland or something. Anyway, we've played at these different places where they have sound equipment, but you have to run your own sound. And of course, I would rather not have the responsibility and stress of running everybody's sound. I'd rather hire somebody who knows what they're doing and have them do it. But let's get back. I do want to get to at least one more of your songs before we close out. But I want to ask you about something just for fun. So tell me about, and you can do this in either order. Tell me about your best gig or your best night at an open mic, and then tell me about your worst gig or worst night at an open mic. You can do it in either order. It doesn't
Well,
matter.
open mics, there were so many, it's all a blur, and I treat them as a rehearsal. So sometimes
Oh,
you
absolutely. Yeah.
you mess up a chord, or you forget your lyrics, or your sound is not quite right, or you're just nervous and you're visibly nervous, right?
Yeah.
uh, or I remember I had this gig, and I, don't laugh at me, please. I didn't have a guitar tuner. I was using my phone,
Fine.
and of course, the bar owner wants to run music while you're on stage getting ready, and you cannot really tune into your phone if there's music blasting in the place.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was embarrassing as fuck. Standing on stage and asking him to turn off the sound so I can tune my 12 strings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, people not showing up to your gig. Yeah, of course, did that. Having bad sound. We played the Milk Bar. The last show I did with my band, we're at the Milk Bar, and the monitors were all screwed up. I couldn't really hear myself,
Yeah. The
and
milk.
we weren't rehearsed enough where we just knew each other's parts instinctively. So the backup singer and I were singing all the time because we could not figure out
Yeah.
who was.
Milk bar can be hit and miss. I know that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and but any almost not every open mic, but let's say half, maybe 2/3 of them.
Yeah.
Somebody happens to catch a few lines of your song, and they walk up to you, and they say thank you. So the land of junkies and engineers. You got to write relatable shit as much as I want to. Feel like I can copy an Anderson and Kurt Cobain and whatever. If it's not relatable, if the lyrics don't catch you, if the melody doesn't catch you, if it's too introspective and deep, it needs to take us needs a certain mindset of the audience or audience members to pick them. But Razor's Edge, super simple song, 3 chords. California, San Francisco bridges that sway. People walk up to me and they shake my hand. Oh my God, I felt that. I'm like, wow.
You're
Like,
writing
that's so simple.
you're writing what you know and what you feel. And what's wonderful is you're tapping into something that's universal. Other people feel that as well. That's what makes
Yeah, and
the
I think
songs work.
yeah, so it's interesting. But yeah, I think the more complex stuff, it either takes another musician such as yourself that can appreciate, the complexity or the
Yeah.
oddity of the melody flow, and maybe the complexity of the lyrics. Especially lyrics are tough to comprehend in a bar setting unless you've heard it or you were reading it or you just
Yeah.
have to have that because it's hard for me to comprehend lyrics. So yeah, there's so many answers to your question, and I don't really have one good answer. There were a lot of good things. There were a lot of bad things. My least favorite or one of the worst things.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you fucked up so badly. You feel like you really messed up the song. You feel like you don't deserve to be on stage, and you should go back and take guitar lessons for 3 years before you get out of your house again. And then you listen to a recording, and you're like, I barely noticed that. But when I was playing it, it seemed to me like the world was over because I didn't get a string or, I was
Yeah,
always told
I've
this chord change.
I've had nights like that. Let me tell you something. Utah became my church for a time, and I'd have my week was the mood of my week always depended on how well my performance went that Monday night.
Huh.
Always. So if I had a really good performance, I'm elated. I'm so happy. If I had a shitty performance, I feel like shit and I want to die. I don't even want to talk to anybody. Like, oh God, it was horrible. It wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. It was the worst thing ever. And I'm gonna die. I've had nights where I want to throw my guitar into the street. It's just, but it is a learning experience. You get over the emotional thing, and you just go, all right, let's try it again.
Yeah. Well,
Try it
you
again.
probably realize this, maybe on open mic number 5, or maybe open mic number 50, or open mic number 0. No matter how much you screw up, the audience doesn't pay 100% attention to you. And even if you listen to your own playback, it wasn't really that bad when you listen to it. But when you're playing it, sounds like you were just really like, don't fucking sing, dude. Like, go home.
You should come if you're ever interested. Every so often I do a gig at the farmers market through my friend Kevin North. You should come play that sometime.
I am on the 30th.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's cool.
But isn't that Memorial Day weekend? I realized that after I agreed with him, so I need
That's
to.
probably even better because then you may get more foot traffic. Do you know what time you're going on?
I'm up at 10, so I'm thinking.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, because usually I try to get out of town for 3 days if it's like a weekend. So I might have to cancel, but I need to. I don't really have any plans. It's just, I have 3 days off, and I already booked myself for one of the days, but I'll figure something out. Yeah. So yeah, I've been meaning to play a farmer's market. I really like that. But speaking of performing, one of the most rewarding performances I've had was on the street in Ukraine.
Okay.
You're sitting at night in the park and you're getting attention and people stop and listen. And I was, with a friend, and we're hanging at the park with my guitar.
Yeah.
And I don't know how this happened, but there's a video of it on YouTube. I have maybe 10 people singing along to my song, and there are girls dancing to my song, and we're at night in the park in Odessa, Ukraine. And Sting has the story how he realized he was a musician when some window cleaner was going, Roxanne.
That's cool. That's
so
cool.
that's I think that was before I played with a band. No, by then I already played with a band a couple times. So it's like you realize that when other musicians play your music, but when random people, they can pick up your tune on the spot and sing along with you, and you're like, wow, I wrote that. That's really rewarding, really, really rewarding.
Well, let's hear some of that reward. Let's hear one of those classic Troubadour Fools songs. What you got for us?
Yeah, I was gonna, do the song with the Indian bridge, but I didn't really rehearse it. So I'm just gonna do a song that I know people like. It's called Infinity.
All right, let's hear it.
If there's more time for more songs, maybe I'll play another one.
That's fine.
Yeah, so this is called Infinity, and I wrote this in Russian first, then I translated it into English.
Okay.
Light of the windows is silenced, the moon's yellow asylum, the night wears headphones. Bright is the trace of a fire, hide and seek higher, and get lost in the tones. To those who know the secrets of rivers, the morning brings shivers where the birds wing, and one will discover affinity by the sheer infinity that a happy end brings. Wish, and you'll see the wind slip from rose petals made with, and a box with a spell. A dish, the questions with candles, words fall into candles, flowers better can tell. To those who know the secret of rivers, the morning brings shivers with the birds wing, and one will discover affinity by the sheer infinity that a happy end brings. Strings will suture the damage, and Nirvana can manage another soul's quest. Rings around the shame, own your game, and write down the rest. To those who know the secrets of rivers, the morning brings shivers where the birds wing, and one will discover affinity by the sheer infinity that a happy end brings.
Wow. Beautiful melodies in that. And the lyrics remind me a little bit of Across the Universe by the Beatles, especially with lines like, "In the morning weeps with a bird's wing." Yeah, that's beautiful stuff, man.
Yeah, that's definitely channeling Beatles.
Yeah.
And a little bit of grunge, because I went to D sharp, in the standard. I had like that in my head that sounded like that Pearl Jammy, Nirvana-ish, Soundgarden-ish thing where, but yeah, other than that, it's all Beatles.
Do you remember specifically what influenced that? Like what influenced your lyrics? What influenced the thoughts of the song?
So two things. There's this film called, I think it's called I Dragon, or I Am Dragon.
Okay.
It's this Russian fairy tale. I had no idea it was Russian. I was flipping Netflix, not channels anymore.
Sure.
And this film looked interesting, and there are lines in the song from this film where this boy who is really a dragon by night, he's flying around, and this girl falls in love with him. She doesn't know he's a dragon, and he says, "Can't you see the wind? I can show you the wind." And he says, flowers can tell people about love better than words, or something like that.
Wow.
So it's that, and there's a real love story. I have this muse that inspired many of my, not many, but maybe 5 or 6 songs. We never really were together, but she just has this muse vibe, and she inspired songs. And we were, in one of our, at least one-sided attempts to to go somewhere with the relationship. But yeah.
Well, no, that's still cool. And that kind of reminds me, there was a wonderful film made a few years ago called Once, and it was about a folk singer who falls in love with this other female folk singer, and I think she's already married or something. But what's fascinating is the whole love story, there's it's a platonic love story. It's not, they don't like, physically get together or anything, but it's a platonic love story. They fall in love through their music.
Mm.
And it's just kind of a beautiful story in that way.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
this was
really
definitely not platonic, but nothing happened not because there was no desire. It wasn't like we fell in love through music. It was just
yeah.
one of these, broken heart loves, one-sided broken heart loves. But, as an author, as a writer, you can appreciate how some of these, bad, sad, heartbreaking experiences, they drive this, connection to this ether where these
Yeah.
songs and lyrics and melodies live. And you pull out yours, I pull out mine, and McCartney pulls out his, and your friend from that prog band pulls out theirs, and
That's cool. So just to close things out, I know we can find you on YouTube. Do you have any other links you want to share?
Yeah, Troubadour Fools is on Instagram. It's on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, as
Okay.
you pointed out. I have Twitch, but I don't really use it.
Okay.
I set up Snapchat because 3 years ago you were supposed to have Instagram and Snapchat and have a Snapchat channel, and that kind of died. I think I'm on TikTok, but I logged in once. So,
I got on it for like 5 minutes and just got bored with it really quickly.
yeah, I'm on Bandcamp, but I haven't really developed it. So yeah, that's one of these things. It's
Okay.
and again, hey, dude, I love your music. Where can I find it? And I used to be one of those people, and it's like, oh, you don't have it, and I can Google it. Okay, I give up. So I'm sure a lot of people who were curious or asked me 20 times, and I said, yeah, it's coming, or I'll make a site. So yeah, I have a little bit on Bandcamp, not much. I have a couple of things on SoundCloud. I have 2 YouTube channels where one is supposed to be for the good stuff, and another one's supposed to be for kind of like, drafts. But yeah, none of it is organized, and I apologize, but that's just the way.
Well, for anyone watching this, we'll have the Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube links up here for sure. Do you feel it in you to do one more? You want to do one more song?
Sure. Let me do the one, and I'll stick with simpler songs.
Okay. That's fine.
I wanted to do a proggy song, but I haven't. Well, let me just go for it. I haven't rehearsed it, and it's got a lot of changes. But if I screw up, I screw up. And it's got so much lyrics. I need 2 of my one.
You know what? It's not a screw up. It's an updated version. That's what it is.
Yeah. So this one is called "Once Upon a Bead," and it was written. So this was for the songwriters or those who are curious. I would call this more of a craft song. I had an inspiration to write a song based on the works of Urban Hesse. So this has the glass bead game, Siddhartha, and one more. And I was kind of reading through them, flipping pages or flipping Kindles rather, and looking at quotes, and kind of wrote the lyrics based on those books by Hesse. And musically, I was somewhere in Jethro Tull prompt land when I was writing it. So,
all right.
Well, here's Once Upon a Bead.
All right.
Once upon a time, upon a glass, upon a bead, with days of future past, playing on repeat. But there lived a boy a step beyond the spoken word, lost in counterpoint, eager to be heard. Reality's what he contained inside, with wisdom he would live, and knowledge he would find. The magic of music from the universe, once he could listen, filled him with grace. Death, when it comes, will taste of birth, lingering on with a sweet aftertaste. The sanctuary of trees protected as he walked the path of solitude where he became awoke. Eternity is but a moment for a joke, he soon would realize, and thus of it he spoke. And so he went, knowing in his heart, life may summon us, be ready to take part. The magic of music from the universe, universe. Once he could listen, filled him with grace. Death, when it comes, will taste of birth, lingering on with a sweet aftertaste. Trees, they hold the truth. If you can ask, if you can listen. Trees, they hold the truth. If you can ask, if you can listen. The magic of music from the universe. Once he could listen, filled him with grace. Death, when it comes, who will taste of birth, lingering on with a sweet aftertaste. Wonderful music, wonderful music, wonderful music. The universe is playing for us. Wonderful music, wonderful music, wonderful music. The universe is playing for us.
Wow.
Okay.
If you made any mistakes in there, I didn't hear them.
Yeah, so I modulate.
It sounded like it flowed perfectly. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I modulate, and I got messed up my modulation, but I hit it. I went back to. I'm supposed to shift half step up in the last chorus and in the outro, but hey, nobody knows.
I love that you play with modulations. You're probably one of the only other musicians I know that does that. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Folks, we've been chatting with, or I've been chatting, the royal we. I have been chatting with my good friend Sasha Troubadour Fools. I'll have links below. You can find him on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on YouTube. And if you're a fan of this guy like I am after this interview, bug the living crap out of him. Tell him to make an album. We got to get an album. We got to get an EP from this guy. You know, we got to preserve the good music. We got to preserve it in the best quality possible so that when we're gone, the music stays immortal. And I definitely want this guy's music to stay immortal. Troubadour Fools, it's been so awesome having you. I'm glad we got this chance to talk. This was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it. And,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You have a good night. We'll see you next time.